Hello and welcome to my series Spittin the Truth. I am the Sports Guru 716 and I hope you enjoyed today's video. Now today's video is regarding the Dennis Wideman versus the linesman problem last night in the Predators Flames game. Now I think this has warranted a discussion that is much larger than what happened last night and has obviously always been a concern of many people regarding health in professional sports, not just limited to the NHL. So this is going to be a very large topic. This topic, I don't know how long we're going to talk about it, but this topic is very spread out over many sports, and really it's a cultural problem. So Dennis Wideman gets hit by Mikko Salamaki, I think his name is, something close to that, of the Nashville Predators. Now, when you watch this hit, you see that Wideman hits his head off the boards. Now, it's not a huge hit. They tabbed it a big hit, but really it wasn't a very big hit, but he did hit his head off the boards. Now you can see him skating off the ice slowly, kind of held his head right after he got hit. Now, as he's skating over the bench, the linesman obviously is over by the bench, and he pretty much checks the linesman now. Now, this is a penalty if somebody does it. I've never honestly seen it happen before, because who wants to hit a linesman? Like, that's not something a player wants to do and wouldn't do on purpose. So that's why you raise a red flag. You're like, why did Wideman do this? And that's what everybody's thinking, and the NHL is investigating why it happened. Because did he run the linesman? And I highly doubt it. If you watch the play, you see what happens prior to that. And Wideman honestly said, I didn't even see the referee. But when you look, he should be able to see the referee. And honestly, I'm going to go and say I believe he's concussed. I believe that hit off the boards gave him a concussion. You had blurry vision. He wasn't all there as he skated to the bench and he ran into the linesman. He saw a Nashville player up the ice, he said. And then, he hit the linesman. Now, did he lose depth perception? Maybe he lost a depth perception and he saw the Nashville player and thought as he was going to the bench they were on a rush and to impede the Nashville player. Or maybe he just blatantly didn't see the ref, linesman, or whatever, and ran him. Now, this is where I think the NHL is wrong. They're investigating this play. I think the big investigation that needs to happen is, why is Dennis Wideman still in the game? Now, Dennis Wideman was allowed back in the game. This is where the problem occurs. Dennis Wideman should not have been in that game. And I'm going to be honest here. That trainer that is responsible for him is probably, in some trouble here, because he should be suspended for allowing Wideman back in there. It's clear he had a concussion. Now, this is where the NHL has a problem, and this is where another sport comes in. The NFL has its concussion problems, and don't get me wrong. They do have problems. The Case Keenum situation earlier this season, allowed back in games when he was clearly concussed. But, in my opinion, the NFL is farther ahead than the NHL is on concussion problems. Now, regarding this, the funny thing is the NHL used to be ahead of the NFL. Now the NFL has hopped over them in terms of concussion protocol. The NFL has a neutral doctor there to review players and look at players that have concussions to determine whether they're allowed back in the game or not. And that is extremely important. The NHL does not have that. The team trainer looks over them. And whether we like it or not, players are either going to lie that they have a concussion or not, or the trainer may lie that they have a concussion or not, because they want to stay in the game. And the trainer is not going to question a player that may or may not have a concussion, because that's their team. They're not going to want their team to be down Dennis Wideman. Now, in the NFL, with a neutral person, you can lie all you want, but that neutral person is going to give you the same protocol they give another player on the other team, and that is exactly what the NHL needs. In the NHL, you see concussions all the time. Boarding is a very big problem in the league, and in my opinion, when a player gets boarded, they should automatically not be allowed back on the ice until they go through a concussion protocol with a neutral physician. That is something they need to consider. Any player that looks like they may have a concussion should have been reviewed by a neutral physician. Now, there should be somebody upstairs in the scouts box, or with the scouts and the press and everything like that, and be like, hey, I'm here to watch this game, and if there is ever a situation when I'm looking at the ice where there may be a player that is concussed or has been hit that may cause a concussion, I'm going to call down, and that player is going to have to go in the back in the locker room and have themselves looked over, whether they have a concussion or not. And at first, this is going to seem like a problem in a sport, in the only professional sport that allows fighting. And personally, I believe, as somebody that likes fighting in the game, fights should end up not with the players in the penalty box, but both players should have to go in the back and be reviewed under concussion protocol. Now, this is two-sided. This helps the people that are against fighting, because you think about it for a second. This is going to take longer than 5 minutes. So you may end up with a 10-minute penalty. You may end up with a 15-minute penalty. However long it ends up, that's the penalty for fighting then. It is no longer a 5-minute penalty for fighting. It is now a 15-minute concussion protocol in the back, where you have to be looked over to determine whether you are appropriately, all there to play. And in this situation, it is completely unavoidable for Dennis Wideman to hit that linesman if he's concussed with this protocol I'm hypothetically throwing out there, because he's still on the ice. You're not going to stop play right there, then and there, and be like, get off the ice. Like, I don't agree with that. I don't think you should just stop the play unless the player can't get up. Like, I understand this is just unfortunate coincidence, is a 1 in a million chance sort of accident. Wideman didn't mean it. And I'm sure the linesman agrees that, Wideman did not mean it, and that he's not upset with Wideman for this occurring. Now, another thing, I think whenever a helmet comes off a player, there should be a stoppage in play. And that player should get penalized. Now, people are going to be like, oh, how can you penalize a player? The helmets are on loose and things like that. Don't have your helmet on loose. It shouldn't be on loose in the first place. It's a helmet. It's supposed to stay on your head. It shouldn't fall off. Now, if a helmet falls off, that player should be penalized for 2 minutes. 2 minutes for your helmet falling off. Either you keep your helmet on, and if there's an equipment malfunction, that's your problem and that's your equipment manager's problem. 2-minute penalty. I don't care what you call it. But if your helmet comes off, 2-minute penalty. Now, you should stop play. That's a penalty. You stop play when someone loses their helmet. Just like a too many men on the ice or anything like that. You stop play and they get a penalty. Now, this is a very big step. I think the NHL was doing this with fighting earlier. They're like, you're not allowed to take your helmets off when you fight, or else you get an extra 2 minutes. Well, why should it only apply to fighting? It should apply all around the ice. These players are getting boarded. There's illegal checks all over the place. If people don't have their helmets on, a puck hits them in the side of the head, as completely random as that could be. That happens all the time. You see it all the time during the season. Some player gets hit in the face. And when that happens, that helmet needs to be on the player. And it has been. But wait until the time when it's not on. And that's going to be an issue. And personally, I believe that now we're looking at this with the way they should handle concussions. Penalize players that do not have their helmet on. If it falls off, that's their problem. 2-minute penalty for having your helmet fall off. Have a neutral physician that goes back and forth, a neutral neurologist or whatever, that goes back and forth between the teams, or you have 2, whatever, and they go over it with players that seem to be concussed. They go over their protocol. If it's after a fight, after every fight, a player must go through the concussion protocol. And then at that point, it's going to deter fighting for no reason. People are not going to fight for no reason if they're going to be penalized for 15 minutes and not technically be penalized. It'll just be like, hey, you fought? Go to the back. You go to the back, both of you guys. You're going to go to the doctors, pretty much. You're going to the doctor's office. The doctor's going to look you over and figure out if you're able to play or not. Because if you're concussed, you're not going to come back in the game. And I think that's the proper way to handle that. You know, injured players, concussions are a huge problem in professional sports. Sports from top to bottom. When you go to the pro leagues, like I just said, but all the way down to the little leagues. When I was in my senior year of college, I wrote a 37-page paper on concussions and helmets in youth football and how they are not up to protocol. And in my opinion, this is a huge issue. Concussions are not something you want to mess with. Concussions are just a mind-altering state. You see CTE. I know the movie Concussion came out and it sucked. Really watch the documentary that the movie is based off of, and the documentary will make your eyes open real wide to the whole situation. The NHL needs to get their act together. This is not on Dennis Wideman. This is on the system that is in place by the National Hockey League and taking care of their players when it comes to concussions. And it's just a matter of time before they have something even bigger on their hands. They're already getting sued and things like that, just like the NFL is. You want more lawsuits? If not, you probably should look at what the NFL is doing. And if you already have that in place, then obviously something went wrong last night. Because Dennis Wideman should not have finished that hockey game. He should not have finished it. He obviously had a concussion. There is no doubt in anybody's mind that's watching that play that he had a concussion by the way he was skating off the ice. And it is ridiculous that he was still in the game. You're worried about him hitting the linesman. You should be more worried about that player that is going back out there that has a head injury at that time. And, oh, the All-Star break is coming up. He'll be rested up by the time it's over. That player shouldn't be playing until they are no longer concussed. And I believe that is a week protocol. I'm pretty sure the one in place is symptom-free for a week before you can return to practice. And in that instance, Wideman shouldn't be playing until next Thursday. Wednesday through Wednesday, you're not playing. Or Thursday through Wednesday, you're not playing. And frankly, that is the way it should be done. You should have to wait a week, but this is a real problem, and it needs to be fixed. This is one of the more serious videos I've done. The other ones were serious, but at the same time, they weren't such elaborate, topics. This is just not even Dennis Wideman. This is concussions in professional sports. This needs to be fixed, and it's a fixable thing. But nobody's going to want to do it. Nobody wants to spend the money to actually do it. But they're going to be sued, and they're not going to like it. And they're going to fight it. And you know what? You have really no right to fight it anymore. You have no right to fight anymore. You know what the system is today. And you know what's happening today. And you know enough knowledge and research and things like that about the topic to know this is a serious problem. And people are like, oh, they know it's serious. Well, obviously, the NHL is slacking. And whether they're trying to save money in slack or they're just not, thinking about it, but the NFL has surpassed the NHL in concussion protocol, and it is not perfect in the NFL, but it is better, and the NHL needs to look at it that way. And be like, hey, we're going to look at you, the NFL, and we're going to follow in your footsteps with this concussion protocol in terms of what happens during a game. And, it's a real shame that this is being talked about in 2016 when we know what happens on the ice, on the field, wherever. And that's pretty much that. If you stuck around this long, please comment below with your opinions and whether my ideas make sense or not. Maybe they won't. Maybe they're crazy. Maybe they're pretty extreme. I don't know. I agree with my ideas, obviously. And I think these ideas are something the NHL should look at. Obviously, the NHL isn't going to watch this video, but these are the ideas that people need to start talking about. This is a situation that needs to be talked about more. And I know it's talked about often as it is, but it isn't enough, obviously. So comment down below, like the video if you liked it, share it if you want other people to hear my opinion, subscribe. I do videos almost every day. Usually it's a spit in the truth like this. Maybe even comment below anything that you want me to talk about in another episode. And yeah, so thank you for watching.